we go, Muniz. He's done it again. Oh, what a lovely goal. And I'm delighted for Sasha Lukic. It's his first goal for the club and he'll love that. The Hammersmith enders are on their feet. It's Muniz again. Fulham 3-0 ahead.
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your Fulham podcast from Down Under. We've got a full team here tonight. Well, nearly a full team, but we've got a full house. And we're here for episode 3 of Should They Stay or Should They Go? Sounds like a song, doesn't it? And here to talk about it all, we've got Sam. How are you, Sam?
I'm going great. I took a nap today. I'm really excited for the final installment of this. This has taken on a complete life of its own, and you know what? I'm happy to progress, and let's get into some heavy debates, and just let's close this thing out. I'm excited.
Yeah, it did elongate somewhat, but I think we did a worthy job of it, and taking this on in detail. Skibby, how are you tonight? This afternoon?
This afternoon, yeah, I'm really good, thank you. And I was sort of echoing what Sam's thinking. It's like the third in the trilogy of the sort of the Lord of the Rings equivalent of podcasting. But no, I mean, what are you going to get if you get Fulham fans talking about Fulham? I mean, you can talk for days. But no, I'm looking forward to this one, and especially this one. Probably is like the only sort of area where we've got less to talk about, I guess, or in terms of players, but probably more to talk about because there's just so much going on with a certain striker that's in form. But yeah, looking forward to getting into it.
Absolutely. And Dave from Crave, good evening, good afternoon to your worldwide audience. How are you? Welcome back.
Yeah, it's really good to be back. I've been gutted that I've missed the last couple of rounds, but it's been great to listen and get everyone's views on the defense, the midfield, the goalkeepers. But yeah, it's main event time. It's the attackers, isn't it? So I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, feeling very much like the amateur today. I'm looking at the you guys on the other screens. We've got the chairs, we've got the earphones, the mics, and I'm sitting here relegated to the baby's nursery. But I'm still gonna give it my best shot to contribute as best I can.
Baby's nursery is always home studio. That's my dream anyway.
It's all about the content, David. So don't you worry about that. It's all about the content. Yeah, look, if we could talk about goalkeepers for 25 minutes, what can't we do, eh? Yeah. Let's jump right in. For those following on the live stream, we've got a list of 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 regulars and familiar faces, and a few younger people, lesser knowns, I guess, but to the hardcore, I'm sure you know them all. But let's go through this and start with Willian. I don't know if there's really any discussion about this, but Dave, I'm going to ask you first. Willian, does he stay or does he go?
Right. So I think I'd speak for everyone when I'd say he'd stay. What a great player he's been, and I've got to put my hands up. When we were first linked with Willian that summer, I was kind of scratching my head because it felt to me that he'd kind of come to the end of his career. He'd had that spell at Arsenal, it didn't quite work, and then he'd gone back home to play, and actually kind of it really hadn't worked out for him at all, and he was kind of hounded out of what club was it he was playing for in Brazil?
Corinthians.
Yeah, he was almost hounded out. It was, and I couldn't quite see the logic in bringing him in, and boy was I wrong. He has been absolutely fantastic for us now for 2 seasons, particularly last year, but this year as well. He's just such a class act. I don't think it's a question of whether I would keep Willian. I think it's more of a question of whether Willian will stay. I don't know if you remember last summer, it took a long time to secure him on this deal, and he was linked with other clubs. And then right after he signed it, there was links of him going to Saudi, which was really confusing, right after he'd signed last summer. And I just wonder if maybe, those links might come back this year. He did an interview recently I saw where he actually said, the club want him to stay, but he'll make his decision in the summer. And that just sounded a little bit on a miss. It sounds like maybe he's going to wait and see what kind of offers he gets. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Willian actually moves on this summer, which we'd all be heartbroken about. But I think, I could see that happening, actually, quite realistic.
Skibby, where are you?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Dave, and I think he's hit the nail on the head. He's one of our best players. You want to keep your best players. Age isn't a factor at this point. I mean, he's 35 now, and he still looks like he could be one of the Premier League sort of not leading wingers, but in sort of the mid-table aspect, he could be a mid-table Premier League player, Premier League star. So I don't think it's like a factor of whether it's in our hands, like you say. I mean, he's living that life, and he's got it quite easy, right? He's on a year rolling contract. He's playing really well. Therefore, at the end of the day, we'll put money on the table and say, "Here you go. Do you want to stay?" And he can go, "Yeah, I'm going to go have a holiday with my family and think about it," and just leave us all in limbo, which he did last summer. And there's always a fact of he does fit the bill for Saudi, because he's an aging player who still has a kind of a household name. A lot of people remember him from his Chelsea days, and then obviously in the Brazil setup. So there's going to be that element of, does he go to Saudi? I think that's probably one of the main options. But again, Forest came in for him as well and put money on the table. So he's in a really nice, healthy position from a personal aspect that, he can do what he wants, and he's not going to be without a club where, there is probably certain other players who will be, biting their nails, waiting to see whether they're going to get that contract offer or if not, and see where they're going to be next year. But I don't think that really falls into his remit. But for me, love him to stay. And I think Marco rates him highly, and he's very crucial to sort of the squad, and not even just for the way that he's playing, just that kind of Brazilian contingent that we've managed to build with sort of Willian, Muniz, Pereira, that they all seem really happy. And I think that's really good for squad morale. So I would love him to stay. I'd be happy if he stayed, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he will be here come sort of August, September.
This is why I've been loving this series, because it's just not as simple as, do we want them to stay? And we're giving the full 360 picture with every person, and that's why this next one's going to take about 5 hours for us to finish, and that's okay. Look, I mean, it's the same as what everybody said. I love Willian. The statistics really speak for themselves. He's got 4 goals, 2 assists. He's third in goal scoring. I know that's not necessarily like the biggest thing that you can go off of, just because like we have a lot of goal scorers, but there isn't a mass amount of goals between all of them. Yeah, he's a generational talent as far as I'm concerned. He is the most capped Brazilian Premier League player. So of course he's an amazing set of hands, and of course I'd love to keep him. If we will is completely different. Yeah, echoing what everybody else said, he has all the options in the world, and frankly, he's got absolutely nothing to prove. So I wouldn't necessarily begrudge him for whatever decision he makes. I imagine if he did want to stay in London, he would do it here. But yeah, Willian always kind of keeps his cards relatively close to his chest, and he's 35 years old. So I don't know what he sees for the foreseeable future, and his business acumen is through the roof, because he's just not letting us know what he wants to do. I don't even think money is like that much of a concern for him, because he's made so much already. He's got a couple of restaurants. He's absolutely fine. So it just comes down to how he wants to progress. And honestly, I don't know. I'd love to keep him, but I'm not going to get too deeply attached.
Look, geez, having four on the around the table here and going last makes it tricky because you're all saying very good things. So now I'm having to dig pretty deep about my very, very favorite player. But that's okay. I've got plenty. Um, I think there's so many interesting things about this guy. Like you say, nothing to prove. When I look at Willian, he there's plenty of guys at 35 who look more of an athlete than him. I'm actually always a bit confused as to just how athletic he really is and how much he's really got. He always looks exhausted, but he's obviously not. But he looks knackered, and but his body must be in reasonably good shape. So, he's a slight guy. He's not a huge 6'4" man. Where for athletes who are really, really big, that can often take a really big toll on their body, and they don't make old bones. And smaller guys tend to last a bit longer, in my experience. So, God, I'd just about take him on a month to month if that was the deal. I'm just grateful to have him because I think he's secret sauce. He really is. I don't think you can measure his contribution purely in terms of goals and like conventional stats. I think he influences our style, our rhythm. When he starts and he's on, we're something else. He lifts other players. I think he brings out that very Latin kind of feel that just from time to time we show glimpses of, and I want more of it. And so, yeah, there's no question if he's available and he wants to play, I'd sign him every day for almost whatever he wants. When it comes to the commercials, he's obviously not short of a kid. I saw a number that he was allegedly worth about 40 million, 50 million pounds or something like that, which it wouldn't be surprising. I mean, quite apart from his commercial ventures, he's been around for a while. He's been playing at a very high level, and you think he could have amassed that sort of money. But I think it's very different for a man like Willian, who's obviously had some challenges in Brazil. His family had a few scares, and I don't think he's in a hurry to go back there. So I think that creates a kind of I don't know, what can I say? I want to say, I was going to say siege mentality, but that's not really the right word. But if you and I, all of us might think 30, 40 million quid is quite enough, certainly would be. But maybe, if you think you're going to live a life and your family is going to live a life away from your home country, you might be tempted to just bag as much as you can along the way. So I kind of see that maybe that's part of his thinking, and maybe that's why he flirted with the idea of Saudi. Don't know. I know he was in restaurants. I don't think he has restaurants anymore, Sam.
Okay.
But the other part about it is that I heard that he had an interest in becoming a player agent, and if that is true, not that sitting in Brazil couldn't be possible, but surely Europe is far more lucrative, and you'd think his future, given he's bilingual at least, and he's got contacts, he's got a lot of contacts in England. That would be gold, surely, wouldn't it? If he could make that Brazilian connection and be one of those key guys to bring people across with his contacts. So staying in London to me would make sense. It wouldn't make any sense at all to go to Saudi, really. He'd be better off developing the next part of his career. That would be my thinking. But, all that's speculation. What the hell do we know? But thinking purely in terms of football and Fulham, he's got a lot to add. Just if you thought he only had that 1 year left in him, I think he's proven this year that he can still do it, and he still does it for us. And I think you've just got to have a squad that can allow him to be managed, because there's going to come a point we cannot be relied on for 90 minutes. And then the question becomes, how do we use him, and can we still use him? It doesn't seem to be a great impact player off the bench. So that's, I suppose, a little bit concerning if you're looking at where this might end. But no, for me, and I think conclusively, if he's available and we can commercially meet him, I'm sure we're all in agreement that he stays, right?
Yeah.
I know we got a lot of players to get to, but just final point.
Dave, go. We love it.
Yeah. There's no. This is a lawless town today.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just wanted to point out. I think that it would be great, of course, if he does. We are able to tie him down. But if he does leave, I think it's also worth pointing out that it creates a bit of an issue for us because we're very unlikely to bring in another free transfer of his quality. So it really would mean the club will have to dip into the transfer market to the big way, really. And that might impact spending in other areas, which we might touch on as we talk about other players on this screen in front of us. So just a thought.
Sam, did you have anything more to add to wrap up?
The only thing I was going to say is I don't think him going back to Brazil would ever be an issue because I think his family, as far as I'm aware, is very well settled in London. Like I'm pretty sure his kids are just English nowadays, and pretty sure they're Chelsea supporters, and they've been in England for quite a long time. So I don't think that's going to pull him in any particular way. If anything, he is very cemented in West London. So I don't think that's as much of an issue. I think the only issue would potentially, be something like Saudi if he really wants to go into that kind of realm, or more realistically, probably just retire.
Okay. Conscious of time, 16 minutes on William. Really does look like a very long podcast, but this
is what we've been doing for the last couple of ones. This is why we spent like 30 minutes on goalkeepers when we were just like mulling around a little bit. Yeah, so like okay. Quick game's a good game. Quick game's a good game.
Right, let's go.
So rather than moving top to bottom, left to right, let's sort of think about wingers for the moment. Let's jump to the other side. Let's talk about Harry Wilson. Harry Wilson. He everyone loves Harry Wilson. Everyone wants him to do well. Everyone wants Harry Wilson. I remember Sam about a year ago said he wanted Harry Wilson to go on a Kentucky holiday and grow a top knot and just let his hair down and be himself and express himself. He's got a couple, but he's the guy that on his day he's sublime. Actually, he's got some wonderful skills. He's got, I wouldn't say he's got it all, but he's a very, very, very good player on his day. But before I won't jump in here and cast my vote. Skibby, tell me about Harry Wilson, his future at Fulham.
I love Harry Wilson. I think just for the glimpses of you think you've got an absolute player here. But then there's elements which I don't think we utilise enough, which I think is Wilson can play on either wing, and for Wales he plays as the number 10, and he did in their recent sort of playoffs, which again it would be interesting to see if we ever do get a chance to sort of use him in that number 10. Maybe he's not as sort of good as pressing as Pereira and co, and that's not what Marco wants his number 10 to do. But there was an element, I think it was the Liverpool Cup game at Craven Cottage, where Wilson was on the left-hand side where we don't normally see him, and he just beat his man, no problems, got the ball in, and it's just the amount of times you have to sort of wait for him to sort of cut on his left, and it's just so telegraphed, which I think is one of the frustrating things I have with Wilson. Is he's almost like Arjen Robben, if you remember watching him. Sort of, he's going to go on his left foot, but for some reason Arjen Robben was just so top quality that you could never stop him. Whereas Wilson, I find, is just telegraphed, and that's potentially why it doesn't work out as often as it could. But I think there's a player there, but he's just got that fragile mentality, which we touched upon. And, he gets put through on goal, doesn't necessarily take it as good as he should have. But, it's just one of those things where you think if it doesn't go his way, you lose the player and he just doesn't come back from it. And then he becomes sort of the substitute for the next game. And then you just think, okay, now we're in this vicious cycle where he, comes off the bench, does a really amazing job, gets the starting lineup, very hit and miss, goes back onto the bench, and then you just repeat. So I think, I don't have any doubt that he'll be a Fulham player for the next few years. And I think there's definitely something there. But is he going to be the person who cements that right wing spot? Not convinced right now.
Can the question then, because I think we all know what Harry Wilson does, right? And we all understand those frustrating elements to his career at Fulham. But can the question perhaps be changed slightly to, is he the guy to take us to the next level?
Okay. I might lean on the unpopular here, and I'm okay with that. As everyone knows, I love Harry. And yeah, we've seen glimpses over the years of some incredible things. I think we do forget, though, that he is 27 years old. I think in our brain, we always kind of think he's about 24, 23. He's not necessarily getting any more exuberant. And I think genuinely, if he was going to be cemented in the starting lineup, realistically, it probably should have happened by now. I know that's probably unfair, and people can say X, Y, and Z about that. But I think for the future, yes, obviously, I want to keep him. But I am kind of just seeing him now as a permanent rotation kind of player and just coming off the bench and just giving us a decent depth within the squad. I don't think he's actually ever going to become the guy, which I feel quite sad about because I've been in his corner for the last couple of years. And I truly thought he might actually actualize that. But from everything that I've seen, and I don't actually mean it as a criticism, but I don't necessarily think he's mentally tough enough for the Premier League. He has the talent. We've seen that. But I think to be a top quality Premier League starter, you have to have the mentality as well as the skill. And I think Harry, yes, I want to keep him, but I do think Harry is destined for the rotation. And I'm not sure if he's ever going to be the guy. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I tend to agree with everything that's been said about Harry. I certainly want him to stay first and foremost. But and actually, as Skibby said, I'd like to see him get an opportunity, in the centre, having seen him for Wales and what he's doing in that role. I don't think Marco Silva sees that because he's never been tried there, but it's definitely an interesting element to his game. He does lack the consistency to be, I think, the starting right winger for us. But what I like about Harry Wilson is he can do it off the bench and he can change a game off the bench. And we've seen that this year in a few games. I think back to, Aston Villa. We were down at half time. He came on. He had a really good impact. I think of the Wolves game at home where he won the penalty. And I think it's important to have players that can do it off the bench and make an impact. And that's where I see his role for us moving forwards.
Yeah, I think one of the themes that is sort of coming through here is that Fulham are in transition in my head. If we're to carry on with this job, we're in transition, and that may last, 1, 2, 3, 4 years. If Marco had more money and there wasn't PSR FFP, maybe that might have, happened quicker. But I think it's not going to move that quickly. So I find for poor old Marco Silva, he's got a really, really difficult job that he's got to make do and actually have these utility players or players that he can kind of make the best of. I can't imagine in anyone's wildest dreams that Marco would think Bobby Decordova-Reid is the greatest player that he could have in his squad. He didn't sign him. He's acquired him. He's doing something with him. I'm not 100% certain that Marco would have signed Harry Wilson, but he's got him, and moving him on without further resources would seem like madness. But that's a whole lot different to your perfect team in a perfect world. So Marco's got to be really patient and not get frustrated and just sort of inch his way forward, doesn't he? In a roll on, roll off kind of a manner, which is the job of a manager, right? I mean, in if you're playing on a PC, you can pull off some pretty miraculous things, but in the real world, it's a really, really tricky commercial juggling job for a manager. Tactically, I know he doesn't make the calls, but he surely puts the requests in, and he's got to temper his desires and his wishes and his wish list down to what's realistic. So it's a really tricky one, but I actually think the man's very good at this. I think Marco's incredibly good at this. On the number 10 role, and this wouldn't be news to Marco. He knows he plays number 10 for Wales. He knows he has some success there, but it can only be that he doesn't rate him or doesn't see him as his kind of number 10. It can only be, because otherwise he would have given him more than... I'm pretty sure he's had a couple of opportunities, not to start there, but he's sat in that role for periods of games, but he's never persisted with him, and I don't think he believes that is how you can best utilise Harry Wilson. But is it fair to say, given our circumstances, given where we are, given that we're not going to spend another 100 million in summer, that surely Harry Wilson stays?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We could have a conversation about BDR, but we talked about him because he certainly sits in those roles as well. But let's not cover that again. Let's talk about Alex Iwobi. Sam?
100%. I absolutely love him. He is a Marco Silva Steining in the best possible way. I love the way that Silva's used Iwobi, because I was never hugely sold on him at Everton, and if anything, I kind of criticized the decision. I thought it was just the Khans being lazy, and I've been proved so wrong. I think he has been such a breath of fresh air, especially on the right wing. I absolutely adore what Marco's doing with him, and it really, Alex Iwobi is kind of my prototype for all the reasons why you should trust Silva. I think when Silva is fully in charge of recruitment, you get players like this attacking, really unpredictable in the best possible way, and has completely turned his previous reputation at Everton around. Absolutely love him. Want him to stay forever. Yeah.
Just dive in, guys. Skibby, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just echoing really what Sam is saying. What a signing Iwobi has been. Massive props to the club and to Marco for identifying what he could bring to the team. He looks worth every penny that we paid for him. I think he's one of the first names on the team sheet. Basti becoming one of our most important players. And long may it continue. I'm an absolutely massive fan. He's got to be pushing for player of the season for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And signing of the season. And absolutely. I think one that I've echoed on the pod before is I love utility players. I love a player that just, you don't know what his natural position is, because he can be so effective on the left wing, right wing. Put him in number 10, number 8. He goes centre mid if you want him to. I think I've even seen him play right back at points. Like he's like Bobby De Cordova-Reid, but like next level for me. Which I absolutely love. I mean, I wish his finishing was a bit better. I'm not going to lie. He does get in those positions, which I love the fact that he gets in those positions, but he's just sort of a very tame shot or dragged wide. So I'd love him to work on that a little bit to be like the ultimate player. But then again, he's playing for Fulham. So, I mean, if he could do that, he'd probably be somewhere else.
Yeah.
But the other thing I did love was the negativity that Everton gave us when we signed him. They're like, oh, we've just robbed Fulham of 22 million. I was like, mate, you paid 30 million for Beto, who's now been outscored by apparently your worst player that you've stitched us up for. So, no, I love Iwobi. I think I've marked him as my sort of man to watch this weekend on the Sheffield United podcast. So my love for Iwobi, long may it continue.
I think you're right. I think Marco's got an absolute knack. I mean, he hasn't signed that many players, but he seems to have an absolute knack of just kind of shopping under the radar, if I can put it that way, and looking for those guys that, you know, all the others look past because they can afford to pay for the completed checklist. And sure, we'd love him to be a better finisher, but wow, what a contribution, and how well it's actually worked, and how well he's fitted in, and he seems like a good lad, doesn't he? Seems like a really good lad. No, very little ego there, and just he's enjoying himself. He absolutely loves the success of his teammates. That's what comes across for me, and I think that's also very, very high on Marco's list. He's building a band of brothers. You know, go on, Sam.
Oh, I was just going to say that Marco basically makes a 5-star meal out of shopping at Aldi, and I mean that as the highest praise. He just knows how to pick those goods. He just knows how to pick those bargains from those.
Well, how many people laughed at us? Like, you look at Bassi, Ajax laughed at us like, oh, you've just spent 25 million on our worst player, and you know, Pereira, Iwobi, just to name a couple. I mean, he gets on that one though. Best coach.
The only one that is probably not in the same league as all those signings is maybe Diop. That he's done a pretty good job, and I'm never massively concerned when he's named on the team sheet, but he probably isn't in the same league of success as a signing as the Castañas and the Wobis.
Maybe, but Diop did have a extremely good first season with Tim Ream. We can't take that away from him. So at least he actually had some results. Maybe he hasn't had the longevity, but at least he's had something.
And watching West Ham this year, I have a fair few West Ham fans. He would still make their defence because their centre backs are terrible.
Don't you love it when you're able to talk like that about our bench players or guys that can't actually even make the team sheet?
They didn't even make it last game.
Yeah, mate. He'd get a shirt on your side and he can't make ours. Yeah, it's a nice feeling. So, I mean, I don't know that we even need to cast a vote on this one. I think it's been, if not the signing of the season, surely one of the top two. I mean, Bassi and Castagna are pretty good company in terms of their achievements this season. But he's a wonderful player. I'm very, very happy to have him. I hope we've got him for a really long time. Okay, well, let's carry on and talk about Adama Traore. Dave?
Yeah, of course he's been injured a lot this season, but in the cameos that we've seen his ability to change a game and really offer a real threat from predominantly the right wing, but he's also been used on the left. He's on a 2-year +1 contract, I think. So we can keep hold of him for a little while. I think bringing him on a free made a lot of sense. I don't foresee Adama Traore anytime soon breaking into our first 11. I still think his role is kind of as an impact sub. I also still have a few reservations about him defensively, which is why I don't think he would be used from the start. But he's a guy that gets you off your seat when he comes on the pitch, a game changer. And I think all in all, a good signing. And if he can stay fit, I think he offers us, a real asset off the bench.
Adama Traore for me is such a weird player. Like even now, like still seeing him in a Fulham shirt kind of feels surreal. It feels a little bit like I'm playing FIFA and I've just signed him because that's just what you do because he's the fastest player in the game. And like he's pretty highly coveted, and so because like everyone can kind of always find a use for Adama Traore. I think it's quite random how he's even just ended up at Fulham in the first place, and I just keep on forgetting that he's actually here. To be perfectly honest, because he's had injury spells, and then I'm like, oh yeah, Adama Traore is still here. That's crazy. To be honest, for me, he still doesn't really fully feel like a part of this squad. He feels like he has been like copied and pasted into the squad a little bit. Like there is a surreal element to him being here. But as far as him being an asset to the team, I mean, any decent manager can use Adama Traore. He's really, really fast. He's got a rocket on him. Doesn't necessarily always get the goal, but he can bomb up the pitch. And that's an incredible asset to have. There's only a couple of players in the world that can do what he does. So yeah, I want to keep him. But I honestly have absolutely no idea what he actually wants. I'm not sure if he wants to start somewhere and potentially go on loan. I could very realistically see that. I have absolutely no idea about him. I would like to keep him, but yeah, his future to me is very, very unclear in this squad.
It's sort of outside looking in. There's something about him being in the squad that just doesn't sit right with me. Not to say he's not good enough, but I think it's more whenever you read an interview or hear a player talking about the squad, and people always sort of ask the playful questions of, who gets the most, squad fines, and it's always Adama Traore. So there's an element of where I was sort of thinking, I know he said he had an injury and then he had setbacks and things like that. I wonder if he ever just sort of fell out with a bit of Marco. Just, he wasn't sort of pulling his weight. I'm not sure the way that he left Wolves was very amicable. Just it was very weird that his contract just sort of ran down and they didn't offer him anything else. I don't know the ins and outs of that. I think it was in the end rejected, but there's something about his personality, and when you see him train, he still seems to be on his own. There's part of me where I'm just thinking, yes, he's got this great asset, which is, something off the bench, completely like an actual plan B on his own. But he doesn't necessarily sort of scream that he fits the system as our right winger. And it's just, I wonder if there is a player out there potentially who would fit the system better. But then obviously you lose that plan B. But then I would potentially rather have someone who cements that right wing position, with Wilson as the impact sub. That's probably my take on it. I mean, he's a great luxury to have, don't get me wrong. But would I be completely like, written in stone, we need to shackle this man down and keep him at the club? I'm not sold on the idea. I mean, we pretty much played the whole season without him. Mostly he sort of turned on for cameos. I mean, if he scored against Arsenal at the Emirates in that last minute breakaway, yeah, give him a lifetime contract, but he didn't. So I'm not that attached to him.
Ooh, harsh can be harsh. Tell me, thinking about Adama Traore from last season at Wolves to this season, do you think he's improved? Do you think he's showing more quality than he did last season?
Not really. It's hard. Like Adama Traore just does what Adama Traore does. He's very much like Dan James in that respect, your favorite player of all time. Dan James does a really, really specific thing. And I think probably the only difference between Adama Traore and Dan James is Adama Traore is significantly stronger and has a significantly bigger boot on him. But he's really just a fast, powerful runner. But he can actually actualize that because he's quite strong. But I think you can fairly call him a one-trick pony. But it just kind of comes down to whoever needs it, and if it's something that we actually require, or really, whatever team he's playing in, do they require it? He was quite useful at Barcelona a couple of seasons ago when he was on loan there. Yeah, I don't think he's necessarily improved that much. Is that unfair?
I mean, I'm just looking through his stats, and he's actually not that great. I'm sorry if I'm being a bit harsh here, but 157 games for Wolves, and he scored 10 goals.
Yeah,
his end product has always been an issue everywhere he's been, and you know, that's one of the reasons why I don't see him as being a starter. But I guess if he's just willing to stay here and, you know, be used off the bench, you know, to cause a lot of disruption when we need him to, then I think there's a role for that, and he could do that role. But I agree, he's not part of the starting 11 for me, and I don't foresee a time where he will be. But you know, we've seen off the bench this year already what he can offer, and you know, it can be useful. So I'd say you're absolutely right, Skibby. His end product is a lot to be desired, but I think he just about sways it for me that the impact that he can have keeps his place in our squad.
Did any of you see an article? I'm not sure if it was The Athletic or something similar, about a month ago, maybe a little longer. It wasn't an interview with him from memory, but it was a sort of feature article talking about their surprise that he actually ended up at Fulham on the basis that his career dream was to be that starting winger in, you know, a Premier League or top European side. And there was quite a lot of surprise that he actually turned up at Fulham, which, if he's come on a free, can only mean that there were very few people in agreement with him. And, you know, that may be true, and it obviously is true because no one paid money for him. But you wonder if that's a contributing factor to what you're referring to, Skibby, in that attitude that maybe, okay, I get a wage out of this, and it's somewhere to be while I think about my next next place I'm going to land. And I know he's had an injury, which doesn't make it easy either. But yeah, it's. I think you're right in saying that it feels like, not that he's on the outer, but he doesn't feel like he's in the middle of the squad by any means. And I guess if you are that one-dimensional player that comes on every second or third game for 10 minutes, and everyone knows what you're going to do, and you've got to do it, it probably feels very constraining and confining when, you know, you think you're something else.
You know what? I'm going to say get rid of him. Let's cash in our chips. I don't want to be somebody's rebound. I don't want to be Wolves' rebound. Huh?
We didn't pay anything. So chances are
let's get some money. So get some money out of him. Just let him go wherever he feels that he can go and sit on the bench there. And
well, it would be more about releasing, our wage obligation, not whether we're going to get any money for him. And if we understand where Fulham's at, there's probably not a lot of money to spend on buying new players. So maybe he's not that much of a luxury. Maybe he's a bloody great guy to have on the in the squad, because he does present a weapon in some situations. Like, as Steve Reynolds commented on the live stream, there would be plenty of team in phases of the game that would be very anxious to see Adama warming up and about to come on. If you're knackered and you're absolutely stretched and you've got to then defend against that, it's not a bad weapon. You just got to accept it for what it is. There's no point trying to have a conversation about him, comparing him to the greatest possible wingers we could get our hands on, because and again, it's part of that Marco Rubik's Cube, isn't it? It's that game he's playing.
Mm.
So where are we, guys? Does he stay? Does he go? If we could sell him, does he go?
If we could sell him, I'd let him go. I'd let him go.
I would let him go if we get money for him. I think Martial Godot coming through is showing a bit more end product for me. So I would rather him.
Dave?
And yeah, I mean, I don't disagree if we can get something for him. I just very much doubt that we can. I mean, he came on a free last summer and he hasn't played enough games this year to make enough of an impact for anyone to buy him. So with that in mind, he stays for me because we might as well keep him, let him, carry on how it's been going, see if he can put in some better performances that might up his value.
I could see him going to like Real Sociedad or something like that in Spain for like 5 mil. That'll do me.
Oh, geez, harsh. Skibby, you're in a harsh mood, mate.
The Arsenal flashback has just really hit me.
Okay, let's talk about the money end of things here. We all know what we want to talk about.
Oh yes.
So let's summarize it. We've got 3 men. Actually 4 men who fit the bill, although one is obviously only here till the end of the season. And I'm talking Broja, I'm talking Jimenez, Vinicius, and Muniz. We can talk about Jay Stansfield in a moment, but let's focus on the senior guys who are actually in at Fulham at the moment. Let's start with Broja. What can you say? It's a really unfortunate bit of timing. I feel sorry for the guy, I really do. I don't feel sorry for the fact that Chelsea's plan to showcase him down at Fulham and pick up a few bucks and maybe justify a ridiculous price tag for him hasn't worked out. For the guy personally, I feel sorry for him. It's a really unfortunate turn of events that he was the gingering that set Muniz ablaze, and we're eternally grateful. But let's talk about, firstly, is he gonna get time? Will he get a start between now and the end of the year? And beyond that, I'll pick a number because no one's going to pay £50 million for him, and certainly Fulham aren't. But let's say Chelsea, in a house clearing exercise, said, "Okay, let's be sensible. £20 million, Broja." Okay, so two questions to you guys. Firstly, does he feature, and is he a meaningful part of this squad for the rest of the season? And then secondly, if he became available for £20 million, are we interested?
Okay. Right. So I think that, right. So first of all, the first question, I would say that I would only envision him now, given that we've seen that he was dropped from the squad when Jimenez was fit against Spurs. I only really envision him getting back in now if there is an injury or a suspension. Silva's been clear in the past that he favours players that are signed on long contracts over loan players. He said quite clearly he's not a big fan of having loan players in. And I think we've seen an example of that already last weekend with him losing his place. So I don't expect to see much more of him. I don't expect him to be particularly happy about that. And for that reason, I don't think option 2 is even a possibility, because why would he want to come to a club where, he'd come to play and has effectively not been given a chance? He's got knows that there's 2 strikers ahead of him. I mean, there's certainly a player in there, don't get me wrong. And, I've seen bits of it at Southampton. I've seen bits of it at Chelsea, and there's little cameos and he's had so far. There's been glimpses of what he can do, but I just think it's been an unfortunate situation for him, and it hasn't, worked out. and I really don't see him here beyond the end of this season.
Firstly, I'd like to apologise to Tony Khan, because I took the mick a little bit when he said, well, when we loaned him in, and he said that, oh, we don't develop our rivals' players. And I sort of mimicked that a little bit, and then obviously copied the agreement with Broja. But he's true to his word. He's not developing our rivals' players, and he's actually depreciating the value. So fair enough, Tony. You're doing well. But no, I think, we've already paid the penalty. I believe the £4 to £5 million or whatever it is for not starting the game. So there's no obligation left to play him. But with that, it's just, without the injuries and suspensions, why would you not? Well, I mean, it has something catastrophically has to go wrong for Muniz to not be available, and then for Jimenez not to be available. That's just the way it's going to go with Broja. So I can't see him starting. Sorry, but then for the question around, do we sign him for permanently? Well, no, because he's just not going to be a third choice. He's too expensive for a Fulham third choice. And I just can't see him fitting the bill. And I can see him going to a mid-table Premier League team, which isn't us, unfortunately. But like you say, you can't blame him for anything. He was sort of sold a pipe dream, which none of us envisioned this absolute caveat to sort of come and slap him in the face and say, well, our third choice striker is now our first choice. So sorry, but that's just football.
Yeah, I actually really like him. I mean, call me biased, but I've got a soft spot for lanky ballers, and like he's got there's something about him where I could just genuinely see in like 3 years' time us kind of like kick ourselves and be like, we had an opportunity to sign him. I genuinely, all I think he really needs is like game time and a sufficient squad around him, because I do genuinely see quality there. I see a real player that, given the time, we could genuinely develop. It's really just it's just wrong timing. And I would actually really, really like to sign him. From an economic standpoint, though, it doesn't really make that much sense. And I wouldn't blame anybody for not necessarily investing in him based on the very limited stuff that we've seen from him. To be honest, I just think it's a shame, because I actually think he has the potential to be a really good player. I still, I mean, don't get me wrong. This moment for Muniz is incredible, and I'm loving it. But it has come at basically the cost of us potentially developing a relatively young, or significantly younger than Jimenez, striker that we could have actually potentially got some decent years out of. But I mean, you have to go with your priority, don't you? Muniz is 22. He's playing excellently. You have to develop that. You'd be an idiot if he wouldn't otherwise. And I would actually like to keep him along, but I just can't realistically see it happening as much as I would like it to happen.
Yeah, look, I think I'm going to pick up on two things the guys, Skibby and Dave, said here. And I think they're really salient points. Why, at any price, even if we could do a deal with Chelsea, why would he come back to Fulham when he knows where he stands, right? So he's not going to be excited about coming to Fulham, whatever deal can be done. And number two, as Skibby said, if he is number 3, which he kind of seems to be, why would you pay £20 million for a number 3 striker? We're not in that league. We couldn't do it.
That's fair. Yeah.
I mean, maybe if we were in the thick of a European scrap, and I still don't even see how we could do it, frankly. So, yeah, it's an unfortunate alignment of stars for him, for Broja, I think. And I think I'm also even wondering whether Marco's not keen on loans, but he becomes available. We've got our problems. We're kind of desperate, actually, when we signed him for something, and we had to roll the dice on something. And And I wonder if he was even on paper what Marco Silva is looking for from a preferred striker profile. And I think it kind of looks like everything he's seen on the training ground and in the few minutes that he's given him is only kind of confirmed Marco's feelings that A, I don't want loan players, and B, it's not really what I'm looking for anyway. And I couldn't give a shite about £4 or £5 million, and it's not my problem. So yeah, look, I think it's obvious, pretty obvious where this one is going to end. I hope the guy does well, and good luck to him. He seems like a good footballer, but it's also the curse of being a pretty decent footballer and taking your chances with a big club like Chelsea. Because if he was at Wolves, for example, he'd be given a huge opportunity on probably half the wages, but a chance to prove himself. And it's even more stark when young players like the Carvalhos go to Liverpool and see what happens. But it's even relevant at his level, I would have thought. Sorry, Skip, what were you going to say?
No, I think to add to that, I think when you look at Chelsea this year, I know they're a big club by stature, but by quality, they're equal to us, if not, inferior. Let's put it that way. Let's be blunt about it. But I think they really struggled with a striker this year because they had Nkunku injured. I think they didn't have that centre forward. Nico Jackson was a bit of a risk. I think he had a bit of an injury issue. Then I think David Fofana. I think he went to Burnley on loan. Broja had opportunities, I think, and he didn't really take them or cement them. And I think he had a goal this year. So I think, yes, I'm going to say that Chelsea are a bit of turmoil for what they're expecting. They're not probably a best team to play for at the moment, but he's not really offered up much for Chelsea when he had that opportunity. And now he sort of came to Fulham. I've seen glimpses, but not to the extent of where we're thinking that was going to see this absolute rising star. He seems to be quite shot on confidence. But I think that's going to hinder him a little bit, that he sort of played for Chelsea this year, didn't really have much success, went for Fulham, never really got a look in. I think the way that he's sort of going now, it's either going to be naturally progression is going to be abroad for him or even championship, just to build something. But honestly, I can't see, right now where his career is taking him at this point. And I think that's just, and he's not going to be the first Chelsea youngster where this just happened to, but he's definitely not going to be the last. But it's just going to be a bit of a concern of sitting down in the summer and finding out what is the best opportunity for me to actually grow as a player.
Curse of a big club, I'm afraid. You take your chance. If it comes off, you're a superstar and you've got a mega career. And if it doesn't, it's pretty damning, really. Very hard to dig yourself out of. So I guess we're wishing Broja all the best. It's not part of the future. Not part of the future.
The sooner he gets out of Chelsea, the better.
Yeah. Let's talk about Carlos Vini Vinicius.
Who's at Galatasaray now, Father?
Yeah. Let's show him the exit at Motspur Park.
Well,
he's gone.
He's on loan. He's on loan, is he not? At
Galatasaray, yeah, Galatasaray. I had a quick look there, and he's kind of playing the backup for Icardi there at Galatasaray. And he's come on off the bench a few times. He's actually got a couple of goals for them off the bench, big goals actually, winners. So that's good in a way because it might up his value a little bit. Because I think we'll all want to find a way of cashing in on him this year. I was really disappointed with his attitude this season. Obviously last year he was back up to he who should not be named, but when he had his opportunity, he kind of grew into it a little bit, didn't he? Kind of started getting the odd goal here or there while Mitrovic was during his suspension, and started to play that backup striker role a little bit better. But this year he didn't start the season as first choice, and when he came on as sub, he just looked like he had the ump and he wanted to elbow people and kick people. He didn't look like he was putting the effort in, and that's a real issue for me. So I was pleased to see him go in January, and I'll be pleased to see him go again this summer. And hopefully we're bringing a bit of income for him, would be my take on it.
Scathing,
yeah.
Put those calls away now, Dave.
Yeah.
Gotta be said. It's got to be said.
No, that's so valid. It's so fair. I mean, I like Carlos Vinicius as a bit of a cult hero. I mean, he will always be the goal that beat Chelsea, which for me is probably one of my favorite moments of like the past at least 5 or 10 years, because I fucking hate Chelsea, and so that was amazing. But outside of that, I mean, he had a fun little fling, but it never really felt like it was going to be the end result. And he was always a bit Diet Mitrovic in the sense that needlessly aggressive, but he just didn't necessarily have the same quality as Mitrovic at the end of the day. If we can get some money for him and he can get his move to Galatasaray, I reckon that would probably be the best for everybody involved. Really, if I can't find a place for Brea, I really can't find a place for Vinicius anymore. And that's okay. He leaves as a cult hero in a sense for me. And I mean, that's even the fact that he's managed that is a pretty good result considering all things. So yeah, let it be, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's almost as if he had this sort of thought in his mind that Premier League is the most physical league in the world, and for some reason he just wants to hurt everyone. I don't know whether I'm being naive, but I didn't see it last year. It was just this year. Whenever Mitrovic is out, he's in. He's just got to be like, right, well, this guy's getting an elbow. I'm going to punch this guy, and you're like, Jesus Christ, just calm down. I think he was just trying to headbutt everyone. Anyway, but yeah, I don't think it's kind of like the attitude in which the guy who played is it Costa? Diego Costa for Chelsea. It's like the same mentality, but he had the quality to back it up. Like he's like, everyone's like, yeah, he's an absolute liability, but he's gonna score. Whereas Vinicius is like, yeah, he's gonna lamp someone and not really do much else. So yeah, it's just too much of a liability for the risk of reward, really. But so I can see him. Yeah, I think sort of the Turkish league, that's sort of the level I can see him going to. I can sort of being one of those sort of players that sort of finds themselves at Trabzonspor and things like that in Turkey, and hopefully finds a home, because I think the last sort of few years is really that's kind of what he's craved. I think he went on loan to Spurs, somehow wrote in a 50 million kind of transfer if everything's, or the option is the 50 million or something ridiculous. I don't know who wrote up that deal, because I don't think I saw a 50 million pound player there at Spurs, but he's just sort of been one of those that sort of seems to dot around, and I think he's just crying out to sort of find his home, and I hope he finds it, but unfortunately it's not with us. So yeah, see you later.
It's interesting you make that comparison from the previous season to this season. I think you're right. I don't think there was that petulant kind of, I don't know how you want to describe it, but it's not useful, and you need better quality than that if you're going to pull that stuff off. Definitely. And I wonder if it's nothing more than frustration and a realization that things weren't working out for him, and it maybe fallen foul of Marco as well for other things and attitude. And maybe it was just a huge amount of frustration that he wasn't getting a huge amount of time to prove himself anyway, and he had to come on and sort of, over egg the pudding, for want of a better word. And and it's interesting how, just a year ago, he was the funny guy, wasn't he? He was the joker in the squad. Who is it now? Is it Muniz? I don't know. He's got plenty to laugh about. But yeah, it really changed for him, didn't it? It kind of went very bad. He really looked like there were some discipline problems that were really affecting his future at Fulham. And I can't see a way back for him. Wish him the best, but I cannot see a way back for him. Sam, you got something final to say?
Yeah, I think he's a really good example of confidence is quiet, and if you compare him to Muniz, particularly at this current stage, Muniz is so calm, he's so collected because he is finally realizing his potential, and he doesn't need to assert himself in the same way. Whereas Vinicius kind of always felt like he needed to assert way more than Mitrovic ever actually did. And he just kind of got that a bit wrong. And I kind of feel sorry for him in that respect. Mitrovic was such a bully, but he was just really strong. And so it never really felt like he was outwardly aggressing. He was just stronger than a lot of people. And that's a very key difference to openly antagonizing other players. Because when you're openly antagonizing, you're just going to create red cards and people are just going to think you're a dick. And it's not good for your team because you put the rest of your team in an uncomfortable position because you want, when you're playing in the squad, you want the best for all your team members. And when you have somebody who is just constantly kind of putting the rest of your team in an awkward position, it's not that great for the dynamic. And I really hope he actually works through that and he gets to a point where he doesn't feel like he needs to basically just bully in kind of an insecure way.
Yep, I think we've kind of covered it off, really. There's nothing more to say. I think we're unanimous about where that one's going, which takes us on to Money Rodrigo Muniz. I don't know how much more we can say about this guy's turn of form and fortune this season, and the timing of it. This could have happened at any time, but the moment that he's done it for Fulham when we really needed a striker and we needed to actually push on with our season, which was starting to get a bit wayward. So his timing for us and for his own career is Hollywood, really. And obviously he's going nowhere at Fulham, but maybe let's talk about it in a slightly different light. Let's talk about his future, what we really think of him. Everyone's holding out on whether he's R9 and he's the guy and he gets the shirt next year. How are we feeling about it? There's 10 games to go. We've got Liverpool and City to come, Newcastle as well. And I guess once we get the next two games out of the way, we're down to our peers and some pretty serious clubs, right? And he's got, he could have a couple of stinkers in the next couple of games. He's not going to get dropped. I don't believe it. He's done too much in the last 6 weeks for Marco not to continue to believe in and keep investing in him. But guys, what are we thinking? Are we any closer? Have I got your money out of your pocket for Muniz to be the man next year leading the line? Dave?
If I could jump in, because I'm just desperate to talk about Rodrigo.
I know you are. I was going to keep you as third, but that
I know.
Yeah, shut up.
Really,
Dave
I nearly fell off my chair. I was getting so anxious to talk about him. Always liked the guy. I just wanted to say that from the start. I was quite excited when we were linked with him because it was a young Brazilian player. I mean, it was, we were bringing in from abroad, and you could see the YouTube videos at the time. He'd hit a few bicycle kicks in his few appearances for Flamingo, and it was exciting. And he was coming in to play back up to Mitrovic in that season, Marco's first season when we won the league. And I actually think he did really well in his few appearances. There was only a few opportunities where he started, but the one that springs to mind was the Stoke away game where he was exceptional. He scored 2 goals. And that was a really tough game at the time. I remember thinking before that game that we really needed to pick up points, and he delivered. Got a few other goals here and there when he got cameos off the bench. And then rightly so, when we went up a league, we sent him out on loan to Middlesbrough. And that was, of course, incredibly disappointing that he didn't get the game. So coming into this season, I think we're all kind of a bit thinking maybe he's not going to develop the way we'd hoped. And I think there's a bit of surprise, really, that Marco gave him a lot of game time pre-season. And, you know, he tended to start a few games at the start of this year. And he started, I remember, against the Man United game. And I thought he actually had a really, really good game that day before he got injured. And then, of course, we've had this absolutely dramatic turnaround. And I think everybody knows I'm all in. All my money's in. You know, he would be my number 9 for the future. Now I've seen enough. I just think that it's not just the goals, it's the gameplay. And I think he really fits our system really well. And he seems a great character to have around. And it might be heart as much as head here, but I just really want to see that continue. So definitely I'd keep him. But the point I really want to make is I would not be surprised if there are links this summer with other clubs for Muniz. And the reason I say that is he would have joined us from Brazil as a youth player who's had limited first team appearances to come to a championship club to be the backup striker. So he's not going to be on a big wage at Fulham. I wouldn't be surprised if he was our lowest wage in our starting 11 at this time. I don't have the detail, of course, but that's how I foresee that. His agent will know that. His agent will also know that there's a lot of clubs in the Premier League that need a striker that can score goals in this league. So all I would say is don't be surprised if you start to see a few links, particularly if that's just to maneuver a new contract, which we absolutely should be giving him. But there is that little bit of risk now that with all this success, all of a sudden we might have to do a bit of catching up and get that new contract on the table and secure him for the long term as soon as possible. Because there's no doubt we will see him as part of the future. Maybe we will see it slightly differently in how that plays out. But I think we'd be all unanimous that he stays and we want him to stay. But it's, you know, making sure that, you know, we don't lose him really is kind of my little concern at the back of my mind.
Carry on.
Skibby,
I'll sorry. I was going to let you go, but no. I think, I completely agree with Dave. I think he's really turned it on. And when you hear Marco speak about him and talk about, you know, we've scouted him from, you know, from afar. And then obviously he was someone he wanted to bring in. They saw his quality. Obviously, it just really commends our recruitment and the fact that they're listening to Marco, and Marco has basically said, I can get something out of this player. I think it was a bit of a meme player, a bit of a joke player at first. Like everyone was like, oh, Money Muniz, he's on the bench. I hope he comes on, you know, and it was sort of that kind of, that's all he was to us. He was just sort of that man that would sort of come in and really do things really in a really unorthodox way, but get results. Like I remember sort of like Ipswich in the Cup earlier this year. And when we were playing in the Championship, he was always sort of that real rough player that, you know, you think there's some raw talent that he's going to do something. And 8 million for a backup in the Championship is absurd. I'm not being funny. Like spending 8 million on a backup player in the Championship is crazy. I'm saying it again, but it's paid off. And I think, to agree with everything that Dave said, I think, he's definitely shown the qualities he could be a number 9. But I think the caution to the wind here is, it's not only the links to say that he needs to get a better deal, but I think what we've seen in the player in sort of the transfer market at the moment, when we're sort of like Mitrovic has left, we need to get an old-fashioned number 9. Show me an old-fashioned number 9 that's actually affordable to anyone right now. Like everyone would go for, you know, you got your Haalands, you got your Kanes, then you got a huge gap, because you just don't have these quality number 9s that are available in the market. And what I've seen from Muniz, he's strong, he's willing to run, he'll do all the dirty work, he's a poacher, he's just everything at the moment is kind of like a dotted circle, and the lines are really kind of not, they're faint, but they're all joining up very gradually that he could become this very, very good number 9. And I think what we've got to be cautious of is there are a lot of clubs out there who have similar systems to us, play with a number 9, but are probably not getting what they want out of their number 9. Chelsea come to mind. They've got Nico Jackson, who isn't really firing. They want that number 9 who's going to be able to be a willing runner and score goals. And annoyingly fits their system. So the billionaire bottle jobs, if they bring out a checkbook and say, here's 40 million for Rodrigo Muniz, we've suddenly got a thing to think about, which I don't want to be in that position, but I wouldn't say that it wouldn't happen. I mean, I know people say not to buy players just on a purple patch, but you see people just buy players just because they had a great tournament at the World Cup or the Euros. So I don't think this whole element or this phase of Muniz's career is going to go unnoticed in the market. And I think we might actually have some early talks to get some contract in place before, clubs start having a serious think about this 22-year-old who's actually outscoring a fair few players in the Premier League right now.
No, I think that's all incredibly valid. First of all, I 100% want to keep him. I think he's fantastic. Love him. I mean, everything that's all been said, I'm just getting that out of the way. It's all very obvious. Just all the stuff we already know. I'm so interested because he's so young. He's 22 years old. I'm so interested to see what these next couple of years hold for him. I'm deeply fascinated to see if he could even get a Brazilian call-up. I'd love to see that in the next year or so. I don't think he's done enough this season, even though I think he's been excellent. I think, and it kind of bleeds into the conversation of like a big transfer. I think even though his form has been so great over the past month or so, it's probably not. I reckon he's probably got to do a full year of that in order to get serious interest. I mean, if Jalpalina didn't leave, I don't think Muniz is going to be tempted. But I would love to see him develop more and develop into a really serious player that can actually get an opportunity in the Brazil squad. I'm literally looking at the Brazil starting lineup at the moment. I mean, like João Pedro, Rafinha, like Pepe. There's some players here that like you could genuinely see. I mean, if Gabriel Jesus can get in, I genuinely think Rodrigo Muniz has a serious opportunity to get into the squad. If he gets into the Brazilian national team, I think we have a legitimate problem, as much as I would love it and think it would be amazing. And I actually think it's potentially quite realistic as well. From there, until that happens, I don't necessarily think we have an issue for people coming in. But the second that it reaches like an apex, I cannot see us holding on to even a third option Brazilian international striker. I just cannot see a world where Fulham Football Club hold on to that. So it's the beauty of Muniz is it's just so exciting because anything can really happen from this point. And really, we're just the lucky ones because I think next season will potentially be better. But I really don't know what the future has. And I think it's a little bit too early to make broad claims like he's going to be coerced by another club. I think as well, just in the economic state of the Premier League in the world, people aren't as frivolous with their spending. I mean, even Chelsea have... I can't see Chelsea spending another $1 billion because it's just been such a PR disaster for them. He could definitely go to other clubs, and other clubs could be interested in him. But until there is serious interest, I'm talking like your 50, 60 mils, I can't see Fulham wanting to sell him at any stage. It's going to be really, really interesting. I think it's more of a ask me again next season But for now, let's just keep it simple. I think he's fantastic. I love him, and it's just been such a wonderful coming of age story. And he's fantastic. Keep him for next season.
Just to add a note to that quickly, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
what springs to mind is managers don't want the finished article, right? We had Chris Smalling, who barely played for us. He played the odd game, but Sir Alex saw something in him that he liked and said he could coach, and snapped him up. Yeah, fair enough. Muniz is probably a little bit older, but I think he's far from the finished article. But I think there are going to be certain coaches out there who are going to see something in him that we see, that he has got this raw talent that then they can mold into, being a backup striker or a Man City for a couple of years. If Guardiola sees something, I'm not saying he does, but if he sees something and says, you know what, that's quite the tenacity of a striker that I would like, we can coach X, Y, Z into him. But they're not going to want to sort of leave him till he's about 26 and see where he goes. They probably want to try and get him now for 20, 25 million, see if they can coach something into him and then make him this world beater. Then they could probably cash in another 100 mil in the future. I'm not saying he is that player, but it wouldn't surprise me if somebody started to have a look from that kind of aspect rather than we need a number 9 who can score for us now.
Okay, a few points here. When we signed him as a young kid at £8 million in the Championship, you got to believe that Marco really believed in this guy, and it wasn't for that season; it was for the long term. And he thought he was backing himself, right? Let me paint a picture here. He scores against Liverpool, he scores against City, and he makes a big impression, and he gets another 4-5 goals over the next 10 games. All right. For me, he's in the Brazilian setup at that point. He's definitely going to. He's proved himself enough. Just the story and the hype around him is going to get people talking. He's already in people's fantasy leagues. They don't even know who he is, but they know he's scoring goals, and the press are following him. It is of some so what I'm saying is that the train's kind of left the station. I think that unless he is a massive flop in the next 10 games, he's arrived. Okay, he's on £19,000 a year, which is borderline disrespectful. And if
Surely
Fulham don't
week.
sort that,
19 grand a week.
Yeah,
I beg your pardon, a week. If Fulham don't, yeah, he'd be running a chip shop at that, wouldn't he? If Fulham don't sort that out, it's going to create all manner of mayhem. Not only within his team, his agent's going to be very uppity and be pulling all kinds of stunts to try and kind of just do what agents do. So surely that's going to be addressed in a very, very significant way. You have to believe it. They're not stupid. They'll do that. I don't know what he goes to, but if you look around the squad, he's got to be worth double that to us at least, right?
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
And if at his age, I'd actually want to pay him really, really well, so he gets all those ideas out of his head that he could do better somewhere else, And so I'd want to look after him really, really well. Here's a question for you: can he score a penalty? Can he take a penalty? Have we ever seen it?
I think he can.
Well, what evidence have you got of that? I've never seen
He
him.
doesn't scream composure, does he? But
Well, he's an emotional guy, but that's not what I'd actually say is a good character for a guy in the 94th minute having to take a penalty.
exactly, yeah.
But I mean, not saying he can't, but I wonder, you kind of want that from your number 9. We've got other guys who could take penalties, but I think it's a horrible thing when the penalty's given and someone else goes up to the spot. Just for the ego of a striker, it's got to be part of his wheelhouse. He's got to be good at it, and I don't know that he is. But just question to you guys if you know any more than I do.
I mean, if he can get 12 Premier League goals a season, we're used to that striker missing penalties. So,
yeah,
I mean,
that's not
honestly, I'm actually a bit scarred from that as well. Like, I'm quite sick of the stereotype that strikers have to do it. Honestly, if Willie can like score a better penalty, let him fucking take the penalty. I don't know why we have to but Pereira as well.
But that's not the ego that comes with the number 9.
Oh, grow up. It's 2024. You can have some mental stability. You don't.
Okay.
I'm not pandering.
Okay.
I won't rule him out of penalties until I see him take one. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that like you say, he's very emotional. I mean, the Burnley goal alone, with the sort of tears after the goal, kind of set the tone. I mean, he's improved now. He's kind of just sort of brushing it off like, oh, yeah, I scored again. Fair enough. But it doesn't strike me as the sort of person you want. Like you say, if you're 1-1 or trying a 94th minute, or the ability to score a winner with everyone on your back, it's hard. But I guess until you're in that moment, I can't really comment. But I mean, I would love him to see him step up to a penalty. But honestly, with the talent that we have, and the more foregone conclusion of Willian or Pereira is more likely going to score, then I just can't see him getting a look at the moment.
Dave?
Yeah, I think that's the point for me that Skibby just made at the end there. I think there's players in our side, in our first 11, with experience of taking penalties and pretty good records. So I think he's just down the pecking order. And I'm not totally persuaded that, it has to become an element of his game for him to be a success. I think, if he can continue playing the way he has and being that kind of target man and getting on the end of goals from open play, I think that's enough for me. I don't think we desperately need a new penalty taker. I think we've got enough people in the squad that can provide that. So, I mean, I was trying to think across the league about the big Premier League strikers, and you are right. I mean, a lot of them do. You think of Haaland and you think of Harry Kane when he was here, and the guys, they want the goal so that the penalty is an opportunity to take it. But I'm not sure it's essential, and I'm not sure necessarily that he will have an opportunity anytime soon just because of the people ahead of him.
Okay, guys. In a wild world, Chelsea come in for him in the summer, and it's 35 million. Are we going to sell him?
No.
Possibly.
I would say yes, just because you're going.
What are we doing then?
Season.
I don't know. Elton gets the deciding vote, I think.
Well, it leads beautifully into the final man I want to talk about, and that is Jimenez. We've cut Vini. We're down to 2 strikers. In my mind, there's no way Marco is going to go with 2 strikers. He likes to have 3. Raul Jimenez, does he stay or does he go?
Okay, so would I keep him? Yes, I think I don't think he was brought in to start. I think he was brought in to kind of play back up to Mitrovic and be able to complement Mitrovic when he came on to the pitch. I think that was the idea when we brought him in. I think that clearly I think we're a better side with Muniz in the team, not just because of the goals that he's scoring. I just think that he suits our style of play. I think he's more of a focal point. I think he's stronger and can, occupy centre backs more than Jimenez can. And I think there are times when Jimenez is not scoring goals where he can look a little bit, where you struggle to notice him on the park, to be perfectly honest. And that was a frustration earlier in the season. He's another that I'm not convinced will stay. I think if he was to get offers from Mexico and, given his age, he might decide to move on, particularly as he's not starting every game for Fulham. I've seen a few links on Twitter around that, and I just wouldn't rule it out really. But I would keep him, but I just wouldn't be surprised if he takes that option.
Yeah, I'd really like to keep him. I'd like to keep him as a rotating member of like the squad. I think it would actually be quite good as well if we could get basically him starting championship games and allowing Muniz to have a rest every now and then if required. I do like Jimenez. He's obviously he's in kind of the twilight of his career. I think that's fair. But Silva's been able to get a couple of goals out of him. And I do think he still kind of has a role to play. And if he wants to play that, that's great. But if he doesn't want to play that, I understand.
Yeah. I would keep Jimenez, but not as a number 2. I think he would become number 3 striker for me. I think with Stansfield coming back, it's the natural progression, which is, can you do it in the Championship? Therefore, now he deserves a shot in the Premier League. I think he's highly thought of at Fulham. So I think if Jimenez is great to have around the club, he's an experienced Premier League striker, which is really vital for, people like Muniz and Stansfield and other young strikers in the league, in our squad. But there's elements of his game which just absolutely frustrate the hell out of me, which is his stupid little flicks. And they come off like 1 in 10. And it's almost like you just want someone to put the foot on the ball and look for the pass. Whereas I think Muniz does that a lot better in terms of holding the ball up, looking for the pass. Whereas I think Jimenez always goes for sort of like the flashy back heel flick, which very rarely comes off. And I think it's just hold the ball. And I think that's probably one of my only small things I have with Jimenez, which is I wouldn't be sorry to see him go if he does get a better offer. And like Dave says, if he wants to go back to Mexico and live out sort of the sort of twilight period there in sort of his home country, then fair enough. I completely get it. But I think we could easily get a sort of a third choice striker, which will fit the squad much better. And I think, we've just got to really focus around sort of Muniz and the way that Stansfield's playing right now, that I wouldn't want to hinder Stansfield's development just because we've got Jimenez in the squad. So that's, I wouldn't be either. But I'm going to say go.
Steve Reynolds on the live stream makes a very valid point that Jimenez is a very expensive man. He's rumored to be 100K a week, which is a lot of money for your number 2, a little bit injury prone, forgetting he's a very serious injury. I think on balance, he's proved that he can still do it, but his body's getting on. And given the fact that he does appear to be expansive, can I call it that? A bit wasteful. He doesn't seem to toe the party line. He kind of goes a bit off script, it seems. And I don't know that you kind of want that from your second man, who might be a third man. Look, I think but really, I'm probably still back to my theme of Marco has very limited room to move here. He's got Muniz working. It's a project that's going really, really well. He's got Jimenez, who he's seen enough of. He can do a job for us. It's expensive in terms of our salary. But I'm going to try and answer a number of these different things here, but because I didn't give you my final word on Muniz, and if someone came in for £35 million, I think in the circumstances, it's one of those situations where, regardless of what he might be worth and how great a windfall £35 million. But I probably wouldn't sell him for 40, because I think we're in a real predicament and we don't have the money, or don't look likely to spend the money that's going to buy a reliable or a guaranteed Premier League goal scorer. We're going to spend a lot of money to buy that player, and I just don't see us doing it. So why would you part with Muniz for a short-term gain? Doesn't make any sense. And I don't think Marco, he might not have the final say, but I don't think he'd be promoting or supporting that in any way, shape or form. We've kind of bled into the conversation of, if we're all in agreement that we go next year with 3 strikers, if let's assume Muniz stays, Jimenez doesn't get picked up from someone else, even as a luxury £100,000 a week, he probably stays. And then the question is, does Jay Stansfield come back into the fold? Does he go out on loan again? Or have we seen enough of Stansfield to believe that he's a Premier League striker? Is he the man in the group of 3?
I mean, I don't think he's done enough to prove he's a Premier League striker, but I'm quite excited to see him come into the squad pre-season and stake a claim for being part of the squad next year. I'm not sure where his best position is. I mean, he actually played a few games wide for us when he came in at the start of last year when we had injuries. I think I've read something that he prefers to play wide, which I thought was quite interesting. And that would make sense to me, because I don't think he's physically, doesn't look physically big enough to be the sole number 9 in a side. If he can provide us with opportunities out wide in the number 10, 9 at a very, at a push, then, it would be great to see him have a chance to show us what he can do. So yeah, really excited by him. But I'm not kind of sold if he's going to be one of our 3 strikers, if that makes sense. I think he might be seen more as a utility player along the front line.
I don't know. I think I disagree with that. I think he has done enough to show that he's Premier League quality. I think when you think about his career this season, and he was at Birmingham, started absolutely flying. I think they got Birmingham, were in the top 6. And then Wayne Rooney comes in, completely ruins everything and just completely shits the bed, basically. And then I think they go to like 18th or nearly towards the bottom. And Stansfield had a torrid time. They dropped him for no reason. He was firing. And then obviously that period has gone. Wayne Rooney has got removed. They've brought, I believe it was Tony Mowbray back in, or Tony Mowbray in, I think. And then he's sort of getting back amongst the goals again. And I think for me, in the position which we've said to him that, you're going to go out on loan, you're going to go to the Championship. Birmingham probably are not the most glorified or the most beautiful of places to go. Like, he could have gone to, one of the relegated sides, you're going to be up there. But the fact that he seems to have dragged Birmingham to a position where they didn't expect to be in, I think really kind of commends how important he's been to them. And I think when I spoke to, I've got a friend of mine who's a Birmingham fan, and he said that Stansfield's absolutely mustard, like one of the best players that they've had on loan in a long time. So I think he's definitely, for me, shown enough that he is ready for that step up. And I don't think there's anything else without actually playing in the Premier League he could do to sort of say that he deserves that shot. So I think also he's just been in and around the squad as well previously, that we've always seen something in there. There's always something that we want to bring out of him. And I mean, we look at Muniz. He had a bit of a torrid time in the Championship and then came out to be one of the stars of this season. So I think Stansfield, for me, would be our number 3, potential number 2 striker. I think he doesn't need to go back out on loan again. I think he just needs to be amongst the squad and to be that impact player. If we get to January next year and he's not firing or hasn't been putting in the shift, then maybe a loan is probably best for him. But I think for me, he's definitely going to be one that's in the fold. And I think we need to promote our youth players as well, instead of having a look in the market, which I've already mentioned is a sort of a dwindling from a number 9 perspective, even though he does offer that more can play through the middle, can play on the wing. So if Muniz, if we need a sort of second striker almost, if we're chasing a game, why not get him to play off Muniz? Like, I think he could be that player for us. And I actually look forward to hopefully seeing him in a Fulham shirt next season.
Yeah. I understand why he's gone on loan these past couple of seasons. But if I'm being honest, especially like I'm recalling the last couple of games he's played at the start of the season. I can't remember which game it was, but he almost scored on basically like I think his starting debut.
I think it was Brentford. I think it was Brentford. Yeah, and then Bobby Reed hit the bar, and then Bobby Reed put it in, didn't he?
Yeah, and for me, he's genuinely been really impressive, and I've understood why we've sent him out on loan so he could get game time. But honestly, part of me has always kind of felt like maybe like this year was the year, and we've kind of missed the boat a little bit. But I'm glad he's actually got like some decent time at Birmingham, and he seems to be doing well there. I really want to give him actually a proper opportunity next season. If it doesn't work, then like mid-season we can send him out on loan somewhere. That would probably be the best for him. I think there is a player there. The thing is, I'm not sure if you guys have already covered it. But I don't know if he's a Premier League player. I would love him to be a Premier League player. I'd love for him to get to that point. He's obviously playing international for the under-21s England squad. So there's a clear talent there. There is something that people see, and he can actually get results. I think Dave touched on it as well. It might be a size thing, but I mean, if Lionel Messi can take over the entire game, we can't necessarily hold that against him. I just want him to get the opportunity. I really feel that he deserves a genuine try, and I hope we see it next season, and I hope it goes well. And I think I hope it will. And I'd really love him to. I'm not actually sure exactly where he plays on which side, but I'd really love him to maybe naturally take over Willian's spot. I think that would be a really, really lovely progression. I'm not sure if that's where he plays. But I'd love to see him fully start making the claim for that first team.
Yeah. Look, my 2 cents, £2, whatever it's worth. I'm not convinced that he is a Premier League player. I know everyone wants him to be, and I like the guy, and I'm not convinced that scoring a bunch of goals for Birmingham means he's Premier League quality. I think he's definitely improving. I think he just hasn't had the opportunity at Premier League, which is a bit of a shame, but we understand perhaps why in the Fulham setup that's happened. But I'd be okay with him coming back and being given a go next year. Are we saying that we'd be happy for him to be part of our three? But that utility player that possibly does something out wide, as Sam said, on the left, maybe, as Skibby said last time, someone to push Pereira and challenge Pereira for that role, and maybe someone with the flexibility of playing up front as well. I honestly don't know the answer, but I'm open-minded enough to give him a chance. I'm not convinced, but I think that's kind of how it's going to go. I suspect, given that Vinicius moving on, I think creates the opportunity for him.
Yeah.
If Vinicius can't be shifted, I don't know. I don't know if there's a role for Jay, whether he goes out on loan again. Don't know. Conscious of time, guys. I reckon we keep going here, but we better not. You can always press pause and come back later after you've had something to eat or drink.
Yeah.
It's not that big a deal. We just touch on a couple of other names that we probably should at least mention. Marshall Goddo, Donald, Sanderson, McFarlane. I think in context, they're all names that we'd all love them to be getting an opportunity, but realistically, are they likely to break through? I can't see it. Marshall Goddo, maybe. I know he's done some good things. He's highly thought of. Guys, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think he's the one standout in that list that's got most opportunity of getting a chance. I expect him to come back pre-season. I expect him to feature, get a chance. But really, I think we need to be looking for a good championship loan here, that kind of level, to see if he can back up, the step up from League One. From all accounts, he started the season incredibly well. We're absolutely delighted with him, raving about his performances. I did see a few comments that after he got an injury around Christmas time, he hasn't quite got back to that level. But that's kind of quite typical of a young player. You're not going to get consistency as they're developing. So clearly, it'd be good to get him around the first team for his development, but then a good championship loan where he's going to play. That'll be the test then. Bit like what Jay Stansfield's done the last 2 years. That should be the blueprint now for players like Goddo. So that would be my view.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd love him to rival Willian. I think Willian's obviously going to be the left winger that we all choose and first name on the team sheet kind of thing. But I would love him to have that little chance. And I think Dave's completely right. I think he'll get chances amongst the first team in pre-season. They'll assess him and then they'll work out where to go. And yeah, I think it's kind of like a 60-40 split right now. He has to, if he really steps up pre-season and we see him, he can definitely be that kind of impact winger, then I would have no problem with it whatsoever. But I think I'm leaning more towards that kind of top half championship team, potentially one of the relegated sides, to go on loan and sort of play top tier championship, if that's the right term. But yeah, there's definitely a diamond in there. I think he just needs game time to sort of refine himself and be better.
Yeah, contrary to what I said about Stanfield, I want kind of Goddo to maybe have a little bit more time on loan, just so then when basically it doesn't become a question of do we need this player or not. We go get him back as soon as possible because he's crushing it and he can slot straight into the starting lineup for us. I think at the moment, especially on those wings, I think it's going to be so competitive. The only reason I want Stansfield to go straight into it and actually get an opportunity is just if it doesn't work next season, then I seriously think we got to think about moving him on. That would pretty much be my only reason for wanting to fully back Stanfield, because if you can't really make it work next season, yeah, we can send him out on loan, but I think then we got to seriously think about where his future actually is at the squad, whereas Goddo has significantly more time and therefore a lot more flexibility. Yeah, I don't have too much. Yeah, that was my point.
Okay. Well, it's been long. It's been detailed. It's been very, very enjoyable. I've really enjoyed this. I think we've covered it about as well as we could have. I hope we haven't left anything off. I doubt we have. We've had a very quiet, respectful live stream today, which I'm gonna take as the fact that they're engrossed rather than chucking in cheeky comments. We've kept Steve fairly quiet tonight, which is quite something. But generally, guys, thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed this. It's been a long one, but I do thank you for making the time in the middle of your days. I'll put it on you. I'll sign off your timesheet. Don't worry about that. Just you send it down to me. And for everyone following along and listening, I really appreciate your attention for what has been a very long one. But I think it's been well worth doing this series of 3 to work through the squad and chat about it and cover it in kind of a level of depth that is enjoyable and I hope appeals to listeners' ears. So let's leave it at that and look forward to the weekend where hopefully we pick up 3 solid points, and take what should be ours. What is that too much? I don't think so. But anyway, guys, thank you again, and come on, you Whites.